So what is a container? So container is a sandbox process running on the host machine that is isolated from all other processes running on the host machine, right? So you can say it's an isolated sandbox like that, correct? And inside that container, your image, your application is running. So you create that container from the image, right? Let's say if you run that Docker run and particularly an nginx. So you create a container inside that nginx application is running. Okay. So that isolation leverages kernel namespaces and the groups. Okay. The Docker makes this capability approachable and easy to use. Okay. So runnable instance of your image, that is called as a container. Okay. So you can create, start, stop, move, and delete a container using a Docker API or CLI. CLI is nothing but your command line. From command line, you are writing some commands for Docker pull, Docker push, Docker run, Docker build. Clear? We can make many containers. Yes, many containers, as many as containers. So can be run on local machine, virtual machines, or deployed on the cloud also. So you can run on your local machine. You can run on any other host machine or maybe on EC2, AWS, or maybe anywhere else. It's a portable, right? So how you can move this container from? So you can basically move this container using that. You can have an image, you can move it and then create a container everywhere, wherever you want it. That is the main advantage of a Docker. So it's isolated from that other container. So let's say if you have a multiple, you have ELK containers. In ELK, you have 3 containers: Elasticsearch, Kibana, and Logthresh. Then let's say Prometheus and Grafana, 2 different containers. Then you are running MySQL, then you are running Spring Boot app. Total 6-7 containers are running in your machine. Each are isolated, right? Sandbox, and they are not dependent on others. Correct? So I'm just giving it, मतलब उसका एग्जांपल मैं दे रहा हूँ ELK का, Prometheus and Grafana का, माइक्रो सर्विसेज का. अभी सेम केस में जावा के माइक्रो सर्विसेज है. तो लेट्स से 5-6 माइक्रो सर्विसेज यदि तुमको डिप्लॉय करना है एंड यू आर रनिंग इट, तो वो 5-6 ईच एंड एवरी एप्लीकेशन विल बेसिकली बिकम वन कंटेनर. ठीक है. तो वो कंटेनर से कंटेनर इंटरेक्शन यदि मे बी माइक्रो सर्विस टू माइक्रो सर्विस कनेक्शन हो रहा है तो ठीक है, अदरवाइज इट विल बी अ लिटिल बिट डिफरेंट कंटेनर. One microservice will have one separate image and it will be a one particular container. Got it? So what is an image? So the good idea is basically we need to understand this image. These simple words में यदि हम बोलें तो let's say कि एक exactly working copy का एक आपने snapshot बना लिया है. उस snapshot को मैं कहीं पर भी लेके जाऊंगा and I can create that copy. Maybe you have seen that movie called as a robot, right? तो यदि एग्जैक्टली आपने एक कॉपी बनाया है जो सेम उसी तरीके से बिहेव करेगा, करेक्ट? तो आपने एक स्नैपशॉट लिया है उसका एक कॉपी लिया है या उसकी एक इमेज ली है, उस इमेज से आप पूरा इन्वायरमेंट क्रिएट कर दे रहे हो, करेक्ट? अब उस इमेज इज नथिंग बट देयर इज अ कॉन्फ़िगरेशन फाइल, बट इन दिस इमेज यू विल हैव एवरीथिंग जो भी उस एनवायरनमेंट को क्रिएट करने में चाहिए. सो रन टाइम, लेट से जावा है तो आपको जेडीके चाहिए, राइट? लेट से यदि कोई और स्क्रिप्टिंग है तो आपको npm पैकेजेस और वो सारी चीजें चाहिए. देन मे बी डिफरेंट, लेट से यदि .NET है तो सम आप दैट DLLs और वो सारी चीजें चाहिए होगी अब तुम्हें. देन यू विल बी एबल टू रन इट. लाइब्रेरीज इज पार्ट ऑफ योर, हाँ करेक्ट. सो लाइब्रेरीज, अब लाइब्रेरीज कैसे मिल रही है? तो वो लाइब्रेरीज बेसिकली यदि तुमने जब आपने पैकेजिंग की है उसके अंदर है तो ठीक है, अदरवाइज यू नीड टू टेक दिस लाइब्रेरीज आल्सो एक्सटर्नली. तो जो भी एप्लीकेशन को रन होने के लिए चाहिए वो सारी चीजें आपको यहाँ पे देनी पड़ेगी, राइट? सो दैट इज द बेसिकली माइंडसेट, और यू कैन से द ट्रिक्स और मे बी द स्टेप्स रिक्वायर्ड टू क्रिएट अ डॉकर फाइल, राइट? वहां पर ही एक डेवलपर का बेसिकली स्ट्रेंथ तुमको पता चलेगा कि हाउ यू कैन क्रिएट एन इमेज फॉर अ पर्टिकुलर एप्लीकेशन. ठीक है. So must contain everything needed to run an application, all dependencies, configuration, script, binary, and everything. The image also contains other configuration for the container such as the environment variables, default commands to run and other metadata. So यदि कुछ environment variables कुछ externally तुम pass कर रहे हो उस application को देने के लिए, so you can also pass that some environment variable and pass the data from the image when you are creating a Docker file. So through the image also you can pass it. Apart from that, some कुछ default commands है. Let's say कि particular time application start करने के बाद you wanted to make a pause or something, you wanted to check it, sleep command like this. So ऐसे भी you can do some more commands, you can run it. So this is also you can take it as a part of the image. Now these things you need to specify into a Docker file. ठीक है? So this is all about that, particularly a Docker container. And so anybody is asking to you, what is the difference between container and the image? Right? So running instance, right, of your application is nothing but your container. So when you run the image, then you will create a container or your running application. So image will have all this metadata configuration details. It's a configuration file or the details for how to create a container. Right? To store these images, we will use the registries. Right? And who will create that image? Docker daemon. So for that, you need to send some command. Docker pull, Docker push, Docker build, or whatever you are using it. So then Docker daemon will perform it. Clear? So if you'll see, right? Here is also, you can say image is a read-only template with the instruction for creating a Docker container. Very simple words. Okay. And it is also possible image can be based on some other image. So if you will see this Docker file, this is nothing but this OpenJDK 11. It's nothing but the base image of your Java, of a Java 11. Right? So this image, your image is built on top of the Java 11 image. Right? So like this, you need to specify. Now here is also, you see in this Docker image also, right, adding. So this jar name is basically we have specified. This is a Spring Boot application. So the application name is basically a banking app test jar. Correct? And it is generated where? In the target folder. So I am adding this jar into a banking app test1.jar here. I can give some other name also. Okay. So you can use that add, or you can also use the copy command here. Got my point? As of now, in this regards, you can use either copy or you can use add. Okay? Yes. Then you can use a entry point. Entry point is a instruction to run that particularly a command here. So in Java, we will see Java-jar. It's like that, correct? And the jar name. So simple words, you can do some R&D here. So where is my banking app test JPA? These many, particularly this is the JPA project. Let's take one simple project here. Any other simple project? Okay. So this only I will take it this so that you will understand it. So here I will just take it up and go into the directory properties. So the properties here, you see, this is the path exactly. Correct. And I will go to a command line. So this is the command line, cd e colon. Okay. Now in this, if I will go to a target folder here. So that you will understand exactly these commands means. Navigator. You see the target folder here. You see the jar, correct? Banking app test dot, right? Clear? Banking app test dot jar. So if I will just directly click here into a properties, I will copy the properties here. So cd target. Okay. Target. Now, if I wanted to run Java -jar, what was the jar file name? Banking app test dot jar, right? So if you will see here in this Docker file, correct? Not this one. Banking app test dot jar. Okay. Same command I am trying to use it, right? Enter. Are you guys are able to see this screen here? Correct. You see this application, we are running it here. Correct. Correct. So to run this, it is basically a Java based application. That's why we are using to run this application as a Java-jar. Correct. If it is the war or some other application, you have to run into some different ways. Clear? Maybe then it is, I guess this 8090 port is already in use. That's why it is just giving an error. But this way you can run it. Because there is one more application is running here. But this way you can run that application. That's why the meaning of this Java-jar. Correct? So here you are facing this problem here because of that port is already in use and all this. But if you will create a separate container, do you face this? No. Right? So for this, so there is some certain commands when we are running into creating how to create a Docker file. Correct? And there are some certain commands. So what are some certain commands here? You can come for, let's say, Docker, right? Images. Clear? So these many images, you will get it and you will see. Got it? Now, if you will see Docker pull, so you can specify any other image which you want to download it, right? Nginx, Postgres, or whatever it is. So let's say Nginx. So I guess it's getting some error here. And if you want to authenticate here, you can also use a Docker login. right? So as of now, if it is required, then only, otherwise you can leave it. So Docker images, Docker PS is basically for all these run. These many containers are running as of now on my machine. Okay. So Prometheus, Grafana, right? Like this, alert manager, node exporter, and all this, right? So like this, you can check that how many containers are running at this moment here. If you wanted to build particularly an image, so first thing we need to create a Docker file, right? If you are a developer, you need to understand that how to create a Docker file. Okay. So there are a certain commands. So I told you that what is this meaning of that, of this Docker, right? Because to run any Java application, we need that JDK. So this is for a, we use the, here we are using open JDK. Sometimes you will also see a JDK Alpine. It's a lightweight JDK. Okay. So this JDK, you can specify the version, which version you wanted to use it to build and run it. Correct? Like this. And you can specify this command here, right? And where is this binaries? There are so many Spring Boot binaries you require to run. Yes or no? So where is this binaries? Is part of where? Is this a Spring Boot test.jar or where it is? In the jar only. Okay. So this is basically, we need to understand where is this dependency jars, binaries, and that if you are passing some command line parameter also to your this Spring Boot application for some other purpose, that is also you can specify here as an env parameters. So if you will see, if you wanted to build this Docker file, always will be, you need to create as a Docker file like this. Okay. There is no extension here. Are you getting my point? And here it will be always on the root of that application, parallel to pom.xml. Then you can just come up here. So will you be able to use the Docker build here? So if I am running Docker build -t, let's say if I wanted to give any name is for bank app test, right? And into a current directory. So you, okay. So it is saying that Docker file, no such file or directory here. You see the error? Clear? So what we are saying, because here in target folder, there is a no such particularly what we can call as Docker file is there. Now, if I will run -t for tag. So there are different switches like -p, we used it for mapping the port, -t for a tag here. So Docker build -t bank app test here, enter. Now you need to run this Docker build command with -t. Tag is nothing but what is the name you wanted to specify. So you see metadata for this Docker, I have this OpenJDK11. Pull token for registry.write for this. Correct? Then it is a cache here, add target. And then it is saying exporting layer to an image, exporting to an image. Then writing this image here. Then it is naming to a here bank app test here. So this image is available now with you for this application. So we have seen that how to create a Docker file, and then from the Docker file, how to run the Docker build command, and then how you will run that particularly an image. Now you got that image. So will you be able to see this image here, bank app test here, when you run the Docker images? Yes, you will see. You see the bank app test here. right? This is an image ID. Can I run this image here? Docker run -p. So on which port it is running here? 8090. Right? So that we are mapping that container port to host port for p and docker run command. क्योंकि उस पर्टिकुलर कंटेनर को रीच करने के लिए हमको हमारे वी कैन नॉट डायरेक्टली रीच आउट टू, सो वी बेसिकली रीचिंग आउट थ्रू द होस्ट, तो इसीलिए वो पोर्ट हम वहां मैप कर रहे हैं. ठीक है, इंटर. ठीक है, सो इट विल स्टार्ट रनिंग दैट कंटेनर. So it is coming up. Till that time we will see it is coming up. Till that time we will again see here. Come back here. So we have already discussed, right? Overview, containers, right? So when you run the command docker run ubuntu, so in the same way we have discussed, right? Ubuntu image locally, then docker pulls from the configured registry, right? Then docker creates a new container, right? Docker container create command manually, right? Then docker allocates a read write file system to a container as its final layer. Okay, so this allows this running container to create a modified files and dictionary in your local file system. Okay, then also Docker create a network interface to connect the container to the default network. Very important point, Docker networking. Since you didn't specify any network options, this include the assigning an IP address to the container. By default, containers can connect to an external network using the host machine network connections. Got it? So Docker starts the container execute /bin/bash because the container is running interactively and attached to a terminal here. Okay. So this is all about when we are talking about especially to the container. Okay. So how this network interface works, right? And then you can say execute that bin and bash command here so that you can interact with the container, right? exec command that you can use it for interact to a container here. So what is happening here? So ports are not available because this is already running it. Bank app, this is 8090 port. That's why it is saying it's not permitted. So we need to maybe stop that any other running container here. So the Docker PS. So this is basically we have already running it. I think so. Bank app test jar. Right? So it was running that. See, bank app test is basically running on 8090. That's why. Now again we are running it. Docker run bank app test. ठीक है. So docker stop command is for stopping the container. If you wanted to kill and remove completely, you can use a kill. Otherwise, you can also remove that complete image or something. You can use a docker remove, rm minus r. Okay. So like this, it will start, and then you can see that some much more details. Apart from that, you can see some more commands here. Basically, very important point is how to create a Docker file, right? So use commands for creating a Docker file. So there are many such more different commands are there, which you can use it for different purposes. This is for Docker build, but creating an image. Correct. So Docker file. What is a Docker file here?